Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Greetings from the UK. We've got friends from all over joining us today. Just going to give the customary minute to let people get onto the call, but we've got a lot of people who are hopefully going to show up. But we've got a lot to get through to today, so I'm going to get going in a brief moment. I hope everyone's well. I've just come back from holiday where I caught COVID, having dodged that bullet at ISE, LTSMG, and every other event that I can think of. Managed to get that on holiday. And then I came back to my dog being lame. So if a Monty Python like foot appears from the top of the frame and wipes me out during the call, don't say I didn't warn you. Right. Okay. So let's make a start here. And welcome everyone to this webinar. Being respectful of people's time, I'm doing this in a 30-minute slot. I will hang around until after the slot, so that we can take Q&A that's there. Anyway, just so that. For those of you who don't know me, got some friends and some new people on the call. I'm Greg. I run and own Visual Displays Limited. I also work as a specialist consultant in the kind of stuff that we're talking about today, but particularly in standards, displays, light and lighting, VC lighting, and of course teaching space and meeting room design. I'm not an AV consultant, by the way. My services are provided either through AV consultants or through leading integrators. That is to say, integrators who are doing systems of the size and stature that we're talking about today. I currently lead Avixa's standard steering committee. Tom, Mr. Mullins, I can see that a former leader of the of SteerCo is on the call too, and you are very welcome, Tom. Please be forgiving about my mistakes and errors. Like the Chinese curse, may you live an interesting time to be handed this particular baton at the beginning of the pandemic has been a strange experience. I've been heavily involved with the PISCAR standard and subsequently with the writing of its descendant, ISCAR, Image System Contrast Ratio. I chaired the DISCAS standard, which we're going to cover today. And also, particularly for those of you who are interested in providing really great user experiences in hybrid spaces, in Microsoft Teams rooms, then Avixa's new forthcoming UX for AV design standard is really something to watch out for. But I've been involved with Avixa and Infocom as it was before that, before we got going. Now, just to help me, help us, I'm just going to put a quick poll out there. So if I could just launch this poll now. I've got 3 quick questions. Just want to find out who we've got on the call, and what people are hoping to get from today's webinar, and a question about using projection, because we're going to be looking at projection in quite a lot of detail today. If anyone could, if people could start replying to that poll now, hopefully you're all seeing it. I'll take a quick swig of water while that comes through. So the background, while that poll's running, I'm just going to make a couple of more initial comments. I'm actually working with Microsoft on a few aspects that we are talking about here. This is very much work in progress for Microsoft and work in progress for everyone. But these views are mine; they're not Microsoft's, and I base this presentation, particularly at the moment, based on the most recent video of the Hive facility that they have out with their Seattle campus, and in particular a white paper that I've written and refreshed on the whole MTR thing. Okay, so. I'm not going to show this video now, but one of the reasons for having this slide deck is that I am going to move through it fairly quickly, and that you'll have the opportunity to look at the links that I've put up there at the same time. Right. Okay. So I think as many of you are due to have actually replied as you're going to the polls. Let's have a quick look at that. We've got a pretty good spread of people across the food chain, some manufacturers. Yeah, and in terms of what people want to get from today's webinar, getting a deeper understanding of MTR front row, room design and display design is important, and people do have some concerns about using projection. That's just helpful for me. Hopefully, that will help me guide my comments as we go through. Right, so. What happened with Microsoft is that late last year, from middle to late last year, they started to put out some really interesting materials about sort of meeting Microsoft Teams rooms of the future. And they put out this on the top left here, you can see this visual of an early version of the Teams room display. And then at their Hive R&D campus that Microsoft had, they actually showed some of the rooms that they were making. However, the thing that's really kind of brought the whole thing into sharp focus is two things. Firstly, in February this year, Microsoft released the front row screen layout in 20:1 to 9 aspect ratio, which really kind of made people think very carefully about their displays and the usual kinds of default decisions about putting displays and flat panels in, that went right out of the window. Microsoft really have nailed their colors quite firmly to the mast using projection, not exclusively projection, but particularly for rooms of sort of medium and large size upwards. That's very much the way that they're showing the way forward at the moment. And this space on the bottom right here, on the right-hand side, this is their main, what they now call their enhanced meeting space. Enhanced meeting room. And this is they've doubled down on the 21:9 aspect ratio. Some tweaks going on to do with the content window, but that's kind of work in progress. However, the thing that I really wanted to spend some time on today, and this is going to be a bit nerdy, and I'm going to make the mistake of switching between various calculator sheets. So let's see who I can who I can, whether I can make a complete fool of myself doing that. But I really wanted to drill down on some of the crunchy decision making processes and calculators that we use to come up with a good resource. What you can see on this slide here is that what Microsoft are doing and putting out there is in fact being shown under really very controlled lighting conditions. Yeah. Under normal room lighting, an architect or an interior designer would, or a lighting designer would set somewhere like 300 to 500 lux on the working plane. In fact, as we're getting more environmental, that number is sliding slightly back, but nevertheless very much higher numbers that are seen there. So it's very much of a practical issue about what we can, about how we can make these beautiful room layouts, but to do it under normal lighting. For those of you, excuse me, who know me, you'll know that I'm always going on about image contrast. Well, this is absolutely at the core of the project here. And so what we've got two photographs here that they've got one thing in common. They're both taken with one of my engineers' iPhones, mobile phones, and they're unretouched. The one on the right, no names, no pack drill, but that's particularly on campuses and schools and so forth. People have unfortunately had to get used, in some cases, to having images with such low contrast as that. Whereas the image on the left is part of a 30-odd systems that we put into Glasgow University over here in Scotland. Those shows the kind of image contrast that's required. Now, looking at that in drilling down in that in some detail, that's basically about conforming with the AVIXA ISCAR image system contrast ratio standard. And there are 4 viewing categories within that, but the one that we have to abide to in this context is the basic decision making. And the number that we have to hit there is 15:1. Now, on the one hand, that seems remarkably low, but in practice, it's almost impossible to achieve using projection. The reason for that is because this is contrast being used in a very specific sense, because it's about we use a checkerboard to do that. I measure it using my fancy luminance meter. And so what we want to know is that with an average of the white squares and an average of the black squares, that the white can be at least 15 times brighter than the black level, but it has to be on the same image at the same time, and that's, if you like, that's the rub. So I'm now going to run through a couple of calculators here. I'm going to use them fairly quickly, but they will be part of the follow-up materials. And as ever, I'm always very happy to share and to discuss that with others. So here is. By the way, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. If I do make a screw up with my screen sharing, please let me know. But I think so far we're so good. So this is a really very simple contrast calculator that we're going to use to kick off the session with. So what we want to know is what the ambient light on the screen will actually be. Normally in a meeting room, you can have 400 to 500 lux of maintained illuminance. That's ambient light levels, and then typically you might get 100 or 150 lux on there. And what this calculator does is saying that, okay, well, if you've got a standard white screen, then before any projected light hits it, then that screen will have a brightness of 48 nit, 48 candelas per square meter, which is about 14 foot lamberts for those of you across the pond. And then putting in other numbers into this spreadsheet, you can put in an ANSI lumens of the projector, the screen diagonal, And what you see here is that under those these are very typical circumstances. You're going to get somewhere usually way under 10:1 contrast ratio, which is not nearly good enough for a for a Teams room or any hybrid space at all. So just to run through what we can do with that, we can, if you keep an eye on the numbers, for the black level and the white level. But if I change the gain, if I double the gain, what you will see is that it doubles the black level, doubles the white level. Therefore, the contrast ratio is absolutely unchanged. What we can do then is double the lumens of the projector, spend some more of the client's money, and that gets us up to the giddy realms of 12.4:1, getting respectable, but I mean that's spending a lot of money to not get very far. And the other thing is to remember the inverse square law, because if you make the screen smaller, then then that will make a small difference. But the only other variable that we haven't changed here is ambient light. So if we drop the ambient light level down to 75, then you see that we immediately get up to more interesting contrast ratio. Take it down to 50. We're well in excess of 15. Take it down to 20. We're up to 43. Take it down to 5. Then we're up to some massive number here. This is a theoretical calculator, but I think it just does make that point. So just going back to the presentation then. The takeaway from that is that in Pro AV, in the normal kind of hybrid spaces and Teams rooms, is the contrast is driven 100% by ambient light. The real nuances of projectors and their expensive projectors and their contrast ratios can't really be perceived until you're in a darkened room. And so if you can't control the light levels, then you need to have screen technology that can. And now I'm going to look at a contrast calculator that my supply colleagues DNP have for some of their materials. So now I'm making a hopefully slick and seamless move to another frame. So this is an online calculator that's put out by DNP. I've got offline versions of this as well. And the point about this is that this enables you to work out what projector you need to get to a specific quality level. And we're going to use that ISCAR 15:1 contrast ratio. And the other thing that it does is to be able to allow you to copy from one scenario to another, so that you can make a comparison between a sort of a normal white screen and then a so-called optical screen. So what you can see in this example is that we've got the ambient light level set in the room at 500. Again, I've got the brightness on the screen surface at 150. Now the screen reflectance factor, that is the secret sauce here. Hopefully that hover over is working for you, but that we've got some quite complex reflectance indices in here to be able to work out what to put in here. But with using a DNP Supernova material, the active number that is most realistic to use is 5. And that compares with 25% for a standard matte white screen or most of the contrast enhanced screens. And that's because those screen materials can't differentiate between ambient light and projected light, which is what this technology is about. So working through the calculator, we've put in that we want 15:1 contrast ratio. And we've said that the actual projector's checkerboard contrast ratio, that's the projector, not the images, is 120:1, which is, if you like, a good typical score that you'd get for a 3 LCD projector. And you can change the image size here, but it's telling you what firstly what the luminance will be reflected back to the audience before any light hits it. But it's also telling you how bright the maximum brightness the image should be in candela per square meter before you create eye strain. DNP have this rather whizzy phrase called eigenomical, but asthenopia is the posh word for it. And again, you can change the screen size here. By the way, when you calculate screen size, I know we're going to look at 21:9. You do need to use the whole panel area, even if you're not going to use it on screen, because although, for example, an Epson 4K UHD projector has got a panel resolution of 16:10, and you might then use it in with the 4K pixel shift and then shuttering it down to 21 by 9. But the thing is that the brightness from the projector is not concentrated into that area. It's just shuttered away. So we do need to use those numbers that are there. However, so here we can see that we can put in some additional numbers for this. I'm using the UST version of the screen, which has got gain of 5, standard matte white screen got a gain of 1. Then you can kind of clear that down for filter that down further for viewing angles, and then you get then you can put in some other, if you like, some other real life filters there. I mean, how much loss you get for adjusting the projector to the source, whether there's any loss of lamp efficiency. See, I haven't copied that across there, which wasn't very clever. But you typically, this is what you see, is that to get 15:1 contrast ratio, even on a small image like 120, you need to have, really what in a professional image, professional projection terms is an entry level amount of lumens, about 5,000 lumens, but you're already boosted to above 10,000, and sometimes those numbers can be much more varied than that. So hopefully that was an interesting calculation. I've whizzed through that, but I am going to do some short videos looking at these individual calculators in more detail, and then you'll be able to look at that too. On with the music. Excuse me. So the other thing that is the other tool that we use a lot are the tools to work out what the projector lumens that you need to use, or to work out what you will get by using a given projector. So got to move over to this calculator here. Okay, hopefully you've got that. Again, I'm just going to do this very, very quickly now, but I've got to be respectful of everyone's times. But this first sheet here allows you to input the size of the image, the lumens of the projector, the gain of the screen, some sort of a reality check for signing up the projector, and from that you can calculate the image brightness, and then you can invert that and to say that so that you put in the image the image size, and then the brightness that you want, and then the screen gain. And then that will tell you how many lumens that you actually need to do that. There's another element here, which is task luminance ratio, which we haven't got time to go into today, but it does give you if you like, a top level that's required in terms of image luminance. You don't want the thing to be too bright to create eye strain. Okay, so that is the projector specification process. And what you will see is that the thing to focus on is the contrast. But what I will always do when we're doing this is just go through a couple of loops looking at the contrast and the lumens, looking at different scenarios. But the real takeaway there is that it's vital to specify the screen before you specify the projector, which is the classic way of doing it. So there are three types of projection screen. There's a standard matte white with some small variants, and then there are some contrast enhancing materials, which some of them do have some limited ambient light rejecting properties. But the lower gain versions have been very useful for the Teams rooms, because using UHT projection and acute projection angles, that's a good way of making sure that you capture all the light and put it forward. However, in this context, the only way of doing that, of getting the kind of results that we need, is to use these optical ALR, ambient light rejecting materials, which are actually micro engineering, pieces of micro optical engineering. And there are various types of this. So I'm just going to break out of this quickly now. We've got various types of screen material, but the ones that will work best for ultra short throw will be this ultra short throw DNP material, the UST. From the light side, it looks like that. From the projector side, it looks like that. It's a really very startling and very effective screen. And then for the DNP, for the conventional lens projectors, they have this Supernova. See if I can get this right. The Supernova material, where the light, it just swallows the light when it's not. So it's expecting the light from the projector where I've got the torch now, but it just swallows the light up when it's not, when it's off axis. And these are the basis of this, why these materials are called optical screen materials. Right. So the practical specification call now for 21 to 9 is to use projectors. The Epson EBPU range, I'm sure that will change, but that's what Microsoft are apparently using now. They've produced these projectors with an EDID that will present 21 to 9 to Microsoft Microsoft Teams PCs. Before, we were doing that with an external processor, but in fact, working with Microsoft at Epson seemed to have come to that. I believe there are other projectors in the pipeline, but we work very closely with Epson, and I'm happy to support that. Image size is something that we need to be very, very careful about now, because the use of disc-gas doesn't really apply when we're going to be using these content windows, which are effectively picture in picture. The other thing to say is that for front row, the twin displays just really do not work. I will expand on that in more detail at another time. A thing that I'd like to make a big point about here is that it's not just the image size; it's the baseline that we put into that we need to calculate very carefully. If you look at this picture from behind with these two people, so there's this lady's eye view here and this guy's eye view here. The camera is in free space, and it's a Panacast 50 camera. It's one of those composite 3 cameras, and taking this camera into free space and moving it further towards the viewers is a very significant element. We're looking at other ways of delivering a good optimum camera positions too, but this was a really big piece of design and is going to make a very big difference to it. Room lighting, I've only got time to touch on that, but again, there is an Avixa standard for that. and also balancing the lighting and the display. I'm going to wrap up the call in a moment, because like I say, I do want to be respectful of people's time. One thing that's coming up in my conversation with Microsoft in all kinds of displays is, again, the need to have a non-reflective surface. Doesn't matter whether it's projection or flat panel when you are specifying displays. I use these calculators in order to be able to certify and sign off the systems that we design. So I'm going to stop the screen share there, and hopefully that was, although it was a very quick whiz through the presentation, I just wanted to bring it back up to date with everything that has been coming up lately with what Microsoft has been putting out. They really do seem to have settled down on this 21:9 aspect ratio, which didn't seem to be the case before. But myself and my team are working on all of these, and we're supplying every part of that as part of what we put into the AV ecosystem through the integrated channel. So I don't appear to have any open questions. Everyone's been very polite and quiet on the chat today. No names, no pat drill. But that's quite disappointing for some of you, but I'm not going to call any names. Richard, you stuck your hand up. Have you? Shall I? I'll see if you want to come on to speak for that. But anyway, for those of you who are going to move on, thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to stick around to see if anybody wants to ask any questions or make any comments. That would be really good. Okay, so Richard, I'm going to. Oh, the chat is disabled. I didn't realize that. I don't know what I did wrong there. But let's go into the Q&A. Okay, so yeah, let's use the Q&A part. Richard, I've put you into the there. If you've got your hand up, I don't know if you want to go forward or not.
Ah, there it is. Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Hi, Greg. Yes, I was going to say that the chat was disabled, so I couldn't chat. Anyway, I was just wondering when you say the dual screen doesn't work in front row world, obviously that is optional, I suppose, to use it as dual screen. I assume that's because content becomes even smaller.
The real issue with there is a place for twin screens, but I do feel very strongly that it's that one of the places for it is not in a front row layout. The front row layout is specifically 21:9. It has a content window centered in the display, which doesn't work with the twin screen. And also, if you because you've got that smaller content window, which is typically 60% or thereabouts, give or take. I believe Microsoft are tweaking with that, maybe even going to make it adjustable. But nevertheless, if you're going to have a content window and you want people to see it back of the room, then you want to make the displays higher. But that means with the twin displays that it kind of doubles down on the width of it, so that what can be an issue is that the people at the front of the table can actually block the view of the people at the back of the table at the sides of the displays. So I confess.
Are they still thinking that the best table for that sort of room is along, as we call it, bowling alley? Because we're not. If we were doing a front row and we wouldn't specify a long table, we'd go for a sideways table, or whatever you want, kidney shaped.
So that's a great question. I think the thing is that I'm definitely not going to speak on behalf of Microsoft. it's work in progress. They're very nice, and they're very open to talk to. I've got a number of conversations going on with them like this, but I'm really not going to speak for them like that. However, what's there in the public domain is that they have two spaces in the Hive that I've taken these extracts from, and one of them has this sort of what they call a gumdrop or guitar pick style stable table, which is like a step towards the bowling alley. So I think that's basically speaking to having a tapered table. But the question is what the relative proportions of that are. And the other thing is that they have stuck with the 21:9 aspect ratio in that room, even though that they're kind of done a half and half thing of the curved display for the main front room, and then this for the other display. Does that speak to what you were?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we were thinking. That was all.
Okay.
We've been playing with it as well in our world, which I will email you about later. But
okay. Well, I mean, I think the thing is that in my usual enthusiasm to get too much into presentation, I was going to look at the whole Discuss thing a bit in a bit more detail. Having said that in practice, the all of the basic precepts and guidelines within Discuss are all valid, but in practice we actually find it helps to key them all into 3D CAD so that you can see where one metric hits another. One thing that you've got to be very careful with with front row is that the person on the front right can see the image on the far left and things like that, and also getting the baseline of the image right, where on the one hand you want the remote users to be reasonably in eye-to-eye contact with you. You want them to be as close to life size as possible, but on the other hand you don't want to crick your neck looking up to the top of a display for content as well. So it's a very nuanced thing, and I think that I do see this as my as what I call standards 2.0, where I think that the point that I make is that standards, I think, are living, breathing things, and I think that it's completely legitimate for an old pro like you, Richard, to forgive me, to take the Discuss workings and then say, well, on the basis of this, that, and the other, this is what I think will work best in this case. Where it's like, in the same case that our kids at school don't get full marks unless they show their workings, and it's that way of using the standards. Now that, if you like, the world is moving beyond what Discuss can provide now. Having said that, Discuss will be refreshed. We're about to put that task group back together.
Cool.
So have I, before I go on to any other questions, Richard, have I helped you? But obviously,
no, that's good. That's good for me. Thank you.
That's brilliant. So thanks for that. It's always nice to have someone come to the front of the class and have a natter.
I'll always do that.
That's what all my best friends heckle me, so that's absolutely fine. So just going down the Q&A then. Someone said they'd like to see a deeper dive on the projected image projection worksheet, especially on task luminance. I think that that as I was saying on the call, is that that the thing that's concerned me a little bit in this kind of move to doing these rooms is not enough calculation going on before the installation is made. It's the old saw about double wordplay there, but it's the old thing about the carpenter measuring twice and cutting once. So I think the whole thing about about using these calculators is actually very, very critical. So what I think that what I might do is to do another more detailed webinar on that. But I think the other thing that we've been talking about is for me to do short videos that we'll post on the website and on YouTube of looking at the individual calculators, rather than hosing everyone down with a quick yomp through all 3 or 4. In fact, there are more like 5 or 6 calculators that we use. So I think that would be there. David, nice to see you on the call. If you're still on the call. So what do you suggest for rooms where they also want to use the display for standard presentations? You lose a lot of real estate in 21:9. Right. So that is something that we didn't get a chance to talk about today. And that is a great question. And your fiver is in the post for having asked it. There are the headline issue, I think, with these front row Teams displays is that they're going to speak to the top 5 or 10% of systems that are going in, where people higher up the food chain in organizations will award themselves nice spaces, and it's not quite no expense spared, but they will put these front row spaces in. However, although we're in a much better situation now, the fact remains is that the whole front row thing is very new, and if people don't I'm not absolutely 100% confident that they're going to be using 21:9 in the front row all the time, then what you're effectively implying, David, from what you say, is this: yes, you are losing a lot of real estate. So I'm just going to pop up I'm just going to get a slide back to share with us here to make this point. Okay. Okay, Dave. So hopefully you've got that. So in effect, as you say, in that case, and in all cases where we're doing this, you are losing a lot of real estate. And what we recommend is that if people are not sure that they're going to be using 21:9 exclusively, then to install a 16:9 system, and then they can use 21:9 as a strip within that. As I say, the Epson EBPU range offers an EDID, which which presents itself as 21:9 to Teams Room PCs. And you can have that either at the top or the bottom of the notional image, but that's kind of a setup issue. But otherwise, you might as well just have the whole screen area and then use that for conventional meetings and conventional presentations as well. So I hope that helps, and I think that it's created a bit of prevarication or hesitation, but I think that for those who know they want to do 21:9, then they are just steaming straight ahead and doing that. DNP are now making the screens at that aspect ratio. By the way, it's very, very close to CinemaScope. There's only a couple of millimeters in it, but I don't know how coincidental that was in Microsoft's findings. So hopefully that was helpful. Right. So have we got any more questions? Okay, I've actually seen what I did on the chat there. I don't know why it defaulted to that, but Zoom has had a bit of upgrades here. Doing these webinars, by the way, since early lockdown, I'm doing them in Zoom, but hopefully nobody thinks it's too ironic that I'm making presentations about Teams rooms using Zoom. But anyway, we're all kind of ambidextrous and multilingual these days. Yeah, so Richard's saying that you can make the presentation larger by removing the people at the bottom. So yeah, that's part of the user. That's part of the the user options that are coming through. It just seemed to me to be inevitable that it wouldn't be prescriptive, that people would that Microsoft would allow people a lot of wiggle room. For those of us who are at the LTSMG conference, and Ian Woolner made this from Microsoft made this really great speech. It was just incredible how much you could get underneath the bonnet with the whole Teams environment and make tweaks, and that looks like to be the case, more and more now. Okay, so look, thanks everyone for holding on. I think that we've all run out of steam and questions. Really lovely to see everyone. I was a bit ambitious with what I was trying to get through in the time, but I really wanted to spend some time on those calculators. But that was great feedback from anonymous attendee about seeing a deeper dive on the projected image projection worksheet, because there are some other worksheets like that which are actually very useful to have, not just for planning but for certification too. So anyway, I will. I'm going to love you and leave you. Thanks so much for joining the webinar. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow in town for Reflex about Teams rooms, which I'm looking forward to seeing some people face to face again. But anyway, I will be putting out these materials, a bit more complex than usual, by putting these materials out within the next day or so, including this recording, including me mumbling on to the end like this. So just be careful what you wish for. So thanks so much for everything that for all these questions that have been brought to it. That was actually ended up being much more lively and interesting than I was originally hoping for. And look forward to seeing you on the next webinar that I run. But meantime, thanks so much, and look forward to seeing you on the next call.